So today is all about trying to use mindfulness, which is that basic meditation practice. And it's a way of taking mindfulness from the meditation into the on-the-go nature of our working lives and our normal lives. So my intention or my hope is that what we're going to experiment with is how mindfulness makes that transition or translation from, here I am, with my eyes shut, concentrating on my breath, to here I am in conversation with somebody and I want to use or apply my mindfulness. And this funny thing for anybody who's just joined is a cat tail. I have a cat who's intruding on me. So I'm going to share a couple of slides just to get us started. And the purpose of these slides is to give us some structure to this conversation. So mindful conversations. Oh, I've got to, sorry, I always make this mistake. It's a rookie error. I can't have two screens working. Somehow Teams doesn't like that, so I've just got to unplug my other screen. Okay, here we go. Mindful conversations. How do we use mindfulness to reduce conflict and have more productive conversations and strengthen our relationships? So I'm not going to present very much. I just wanted to make sure we had some ideas. So also just to let you know that we are beta testing a new gizmo. So my co-author and I, Phil Renshaw, we wrote a book several years ago called Coaching on the Go. And we've just been learning to code. So we're a couple of old geezers who've gone back to school to learn how to code. And we've put some of our core ideas into a gizmo where you can do a little self-assessment. So if you're interested in being part of our beta test, just put onto the chat your email address and we will include you in our beta test. So let's turn to a normal conversation. Here we are. I've just laid it out as a you said, they said. You say blah, blah, blah. They say blah, blah, blah. You say blah, 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 blah. Yep, 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 yep. So this is how conversation looks. And usually when people do an analysis of, or if you ever have a conversation and you think back to that conversation, this is often how you kind of envisage it or reimagine it as, I said, they said, so on, a ping pong back and forth. And actually, Harvard has done some research on conversations that get difficult, conversations that get knotty or tricky. And they've said in any conversation, there are 5 different conversations. So this is the first conversation. You say, they say. However, there is another conversation because inside of your head, as the conversation is going on, you have thoughts and feelings inside of you which don't necessarily come out in what you say, but you are nevertheless in conversation with yourself while you are in conversation with somebody else. So while you're talking to somebody externally, internally, you're processing what is happening. You're processing thoughts and feelings. So that's the second conversation that's happening. And then it won't surprise you to learn that, of course, inside of the other person, they're also having their own thoughts and feelings. So they are also in conversation with themselves. So we have conversation with 2 people, and person 1 is in conversation with themselves, and person 2 is also in conversation with themselves. And of course, what is happening inside of you is leaking or is influencing what comes out of your mouth. So if you have the thoughts, I am failing, or if you have the thoughts, they hate me, some of what you say to that person is going to be influenced by that thought or that feeling. And similarly, on the other side, if they are thinking and feeling this other person is not understanding me, or just a sense of frustration, why is this so difficult to communicate, that also leaks or comes about in the first conversation here. Now, the theory from Harvard is that the real conversation we need to be having is this one. We need to be connecting. This is often called the left-hand column. So the things that are happening inside of your head, it's the left-hand column because when we get people to do this exercise, we ask them to write their left-hand column, which is the you think and feel column. So Harvard's theory is that we need to connect the two sets of left-hand columns, and that is the real conversation that needs to happen for us to have a conversation that is mindful and constructive and fulfilling. So that's the theory, and I'm just going to give you some little workouts now. So take yourselves off mute and let's have a go. Let's brainstorm these. So let's say that in this conversation, you feel that the other person is not listening and therefore they are not able to understand what you're saying. They're not able to comprehend what you are saying. So the mindful approach to this is to notice that that's what you're thinking and feeling. And then to use that awareness to give some expression to it. So what might the expression be that you want to use as a result of noticing that that's what you're feeling? Anybody can shout out if you want to join in.
I don't know if this will help, but I would go the other way, and from what I've learned from mindfulness is that I make myself aware of that, and it may be someone that you know will not listen, and to just understand that and maybe change the conversation completely if you want to go that way.
Maybe. Okay. So I like so the first part, which you said was, I use my mindfulness to become fully aware of what I am experiencing, right? So here are all these things bubbling up in me. And then you also notice that you're making some assumptions about the other person, about this person's ability to listen, this person's willingness to listen. And then you might make a mindful choice to just divert the conversation. Okay. The other thing would be to use your mindfulness to give it an expression. Can you think of a way of giving this an expression which allows those thoughts and feelings to be acknowledged and in a way that is constructive? So I wrote down a question. So I would often use a mindful question to say to somebody, what is it about what I'm saying that is clear to you, and what is it that's not clear to you about what I'm saying? So I would gently call attention to the fact that I notice that they're struggling. I notice that they're not demonstrating to me that they're clear. And so I use that knowledge or that awareness to just say what's clear and what's not clear about my point of view. So that would be another mindful way of doing it. So let's try another. And of course, everybody's individual, and the way you the way you pay attention and the way you express that is going to be very different. So it's very similar to the first one, but you notice that the other person is in a hurry and the subject is very complicated and it needs a lot of time to talk about it because it's not black or white and it cannot be simplified. You know, it's very nuanced, and you need this other person to understand those nuances, and you actually you need them to slow down and not be in such a hurry. So I wonder what's the mindful way that you might approach this one. Yeah.
Can you reschedule your conversation with them when they have
Nice.
more time?
Yes. Nice. Yes. I think that's absolutely the right thing, is to notice the hurriedness, to say, I notice you're hurried, or I notice we're skipping over detail here, and that might not be the right thing. So yeah, I agree with you. So again, the mindfulness is about that awareness of, oh, there's a lot of speed, there's a lot of haste, there's a lot of superficiality, if you like. So what I wrote down is very similar to what you're suggesting. I'm wondering if now is not the best time. I think we need to bookmark, say, 30 minutes to look at this together because it's quite complex. So again, because I want them to understand that I need 30 minutes, I put attention on because it's complex, because I need you to pay attention. Yeah. Good.
Can I ask a question there that so they might be in a hurry because they're trying to actually avoid the topic,
Yes.
and so even rescheduling. So I was wondering, so in my mind, I was thinking, try and get them on a topic that you know that they quite like, but only if you know they're not really rushing off and they're just trying to avoid it, and get them sort of more relaxed in their mind, and then try and go back to that but slower, and so you're slow in introducing that. But yeah, I don't know if that's a
no,
way.
that would be really interesting, wouldn't it? That would be great to notice that this hurriedness might be avoiding, but not saying that I know that they're avoiding, but to kind of have that as a working hypothesis of, oh, I wonder if this is something they find difficult, or I wonder if this is something they are avoiding. Let's change the subject, open the subject up, help them to become more at peace or more relaxed, and then come back to the subject and then see if the hurry reasserts itself. And that would be a very good way of testing your hypothesis. Yeah, great. Thank you. I love it. So, okay, now this is the last example, but let's suggest that the other person has said something in a nasty tone of voice and you just feel a little bit disturbed by it. So it's often the case that people are a bit sharp, and they say things or they use words unwisely, and it has an impact on how we're thinking and feeling. What's the mindful response to that? How would we use mindfulness in that way?
That's a tough one. Confrontation is not easy.
Yeah. So how would you make it not confrontational? How would you make it because mindfulness isn't confrontational. It's strong, but it has a gentleness, it has a compassion component.
And I've found that people are not so observant. And so they may not think that they're being gruff
Yes.
or nasty.
Yes,
And I always think, well, am I interpreting it? Am I too sensitive?
that's it.
So I don't know what the perfect response would be, but maybe I would, say it in a different way and see what their response is. Or maybe I've touched a sensitive trigger. I don't,
Yes,
or maybe they're having a rough day and just venting, and I'm
yes,
I'm
yes,
I'm their
yes.
I'm their sounding board.
Yes, I think those reflections. So what you've just done is you've said, okay, there may be multiple explanations. This may not be personal to me, or it may be my sensitivities, or it may be that something else is happening in their life. So that's a really mindful way of noticing and not escalating. So
Mhm.
sometimes when people are a bit nasty, we escalate. And then
Mhm.
of course once it begins to escalate, we can't calm it down. So I wrote down just something like it's fine to say I'm feeling bruised by your comments. I'm sure you didn't mean to be nasty. Or, it depends what they've said. I might say, I'm feeling a bit bruised by the phrase that you used a minute ago. And then I'd say back that phrase. And I'm not asking them to justify it or whatever, but I'm inviting them to say in what context they meant it, or to acknowledge that their words may have had an impact on me. So this mindfulness practice is to bring our awareness to the left-hand column, to all the things that are happening in our head, not just the things that are being said, and to recognize that the other person on the other side also has things in their head. And the first principle of mindfulness is, if you like, a pause point, this ability to stop and just to notice, that's what's happening here. So I'll just finish my slides very quickly and then we'll do a practice so that we can see how this comes into our practice. If you haven't been before and you want to, please photograph this slide. It's other resources that I make available. Phil and I have made tons and tons of videos. They're all on YouTube. There are mailing lists. There's the WhatsApp group for ABFI, and there's the WhatsApp group for a general mindfulness group that I run. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. So all the resources you could ever need for more mindfulness. But for now, I'll stop sharing and I'm going to just lead a very, very simple practice, which is around pausing. And this place in our practice, whether we're in conversation with somebody or whether it's within our sitting practice, that we can use this idea of a pause to notice what's happening. So please come to a sitting position and a posture that you feel comfortable in. Going to be here for about 10 or 15 minutes. Somebody's trying to get in. So let me just see who that is. So we're just sitting in our normal posture with our feet on the floor and our bum on the seat. Take a moment to come into yourself and down into the belly, to bring your consciousness, your awareness into your belly. And the first question to yourself is, what's happening? So even without being in conversation with somebody else, it's often the case that inside of us, things are happening. We have a mood, we have a sense of the day, we have anxiety about what's to come, we have regrets about what's just happened. So what is here? And you don't have to do anything about that. You can just notice. And once you've identified what's here, just take 3 mindful breaths. So that doesn't mean you exaggerate the breath. It just means you absolutely pay attention to 3 in and 3 out. When you've finished your 3 mindful breaths, just relax the mind a little bit more. And now take 3 more mindful breaths, paying attention to the in-breath, paying attention to the out-breath, paying attention to the ends of the breath where you often have a little pause. And then go back into the body, fully into the body, where the breath comes into the belly. And again, the question, what do you notice? What do you notice? Of course, one of the things you might notice is no sooner have you found something than there's the next thing to find. So none of this is static. None of this is fixed. Oh, I have a thought about lunch. And then I'm back to the breath. Oh, I notice a pain in my right hip. And then I'm back to the breath. Oh, I notice the noise of people next door. And I'm back to the breath. And then I can rest on the breath. And rest on the breath. And then my tummy gurgles again. And I'm pulled away to that. So each noticing is just a time slice of the next thing, and then the next thing, and the next thing. And then back to the breath. If you get lost at all, just take 3 mindful breaths. So return to that very simple practice of in breath, out breath, in breath, out breath, in breath, out breath, with the mind fully captured by the sensations of breathing. So the question each time is, what's here? What am I noticing? What's the flavor of my experience? So this is the basic question we ask when we're in conversation with somebody. What's the flavor of my experience? And then we can always take 3 mindful breaths, even with our eyes open. And keep noticing the flavor of our experience. So just in the last few moments of this practice, turning your attention now to something called meta awareness. So it's overarching awareness. Thinking about what's shifted or moved or changed through this experience, what's become clear. And when you're ready, just taking 1 or 2 slightly deeper breaths. And wiggling fingers and toes, stretching, yawning, doing anything you need to come back to eyes open and the group. And I'm just about to close the recording and invite some comments and questions. And I